Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV presents Beyond the Realm. Okay, the channel for paranormal stories. I'm back for another spooktacular story from the Empress Beyond the Realm broadcast. Melanated Brown, you are too much. Not spooktacular. Oh, I am so through. LeVar says, oh, cute scar. Thank you. Thank you, beloved. Okay, so let's get into it, people. So as I was telling you, this story is about exorcisms, demonic possession. It was a movie that came out in 2011 starring Anthony Hopkins called The Rite. Okay? And actually, it came out in 2007. It says 2007. I thought it was 2011. Clearly, time flies. That's been over a decade. But anyway, based off of real events, okay? Now, The Rite, starring Sir Anthony Hopkins, was released in 2007. And I think they made a mistake. I'm sorry, I think it was 2011. I'm pretty sure it was 2011. In fact, it was. They made a mistake. It wasn't 2007. I'm pretty sure. Fact check it, people. Okay, so it could be easily mistaken for yet another movie attempting to cash in on The Exorcist. Now, that was, for those of you that saw The Exorcist, that was clearly a scary movie about demonic possession that came out in the 70s. Now, what you may not know is that the movie was actually based on real events, both The Exorcist and The Rite, clearly about real events. There aren't many priests who are trained to be exorcists, but one of them who is still an acting exorcist today is Father Gary Thomas. He's one of the unique few. Now, Thomas ministers the Sacred Heat Parish in Saratoga, California. And after finishing his 12-year term as a pastor of his previous parish, that is where he now, pastors. So Thomas was preparing for the sabbatical, and exorcism wasn't even on his agenda at the time. But it was introduced to him towards the end of his term. He traveled to Rome in 2005. He actually went to Rome. Of course, that's the location of the Vatican. But he actually went to Rome to start training to become an exorcist. Now, he reports that the exorcism training was good, but he felt he would benefit more from hands-on experiences. So while he was there, he was taken under the wing of Father Camille de Philippis, one of the 9 exorcists that operate in Rome. And there was a high demand for exorcism within the United States. And Thomas states that he receives a new case every couple of days. Every couple of days, people. That's how many demons. Now, I need y'all to pay attention to that, because that is how many demons that there are roaming through the globe and in the United States. So with that all being said, if he's asked to perform an exorcism every couple of days, that's just the people who ask and request an exorcism. What about the people who don't even engage in that? Or they are consistently, plagued for years by demonic possession. And they're afraid to speak out because, people often don't believe it. They think they're crazy, think they suffer from schizophrenia, think they have some type of having a mental breakdown. Because remember, as I told you before, demonic possession and mental illness have the same, in most cases, especially schizophrenia, have much of the same characteristics and symptoms. So anyway, he says that he recalls one of the cases that involved a married woman who called herself Lisa. Now, she was in her 20s. This woman was brought to Thomas's office by her family members because they grew more and more concerned about her unexplainable violence outburst. Thomas recalls feeling a huge presence in the room when she arrived. And when he began to pray, he recognized that her face had started to become distorted. Lisa then started to speak in a language that Thomas did not understand. Now, he recalls her spitting and hissing while having the look of a serpentine in her eyes, a look that he automatically recognized as demonic possession. And let me tell you what that looks like in case you're wondering. The pupils and the eyes, the irises get very dark. I mean, like jet black. The person starts to have the stoic look upon their face, and it's like there's nothing there. You know how they say the eyes are the mirrors to the soul? And you can look at someone's eyes very often to tell what they're thinking, how they're feeling, if they're angry, happy, mad, or whatever, depressed. But when it's someone who's demonically possessed, there's like no light, there's nothing there, just like looking into a dark hole. That's just my opinion. So anyway, he immediately recognized by her eyes that she was possessed by a demon. And as he laid his crucifix on her, she let out a huge scream. Thomas then laid his stole on her, which represents Thomas's authority within the Catholic Church and recalls her slipping out of her seat to escape from it. Now, despite witnessing demonic possession, Thomas does put a lot of his cases down. He turns them down because he feels like they're mental health issues. One of the ways that you can tell if it's a mental health issue or demonic possession is people who are demonically possessed, they have an aversion to holy things like holy water, the Bible, you reading the scripture, a crucifix, things like that. But somebody who's just mentally ill, they wouldn't be afraid or, have an aversion to holy things. So in this regard, months of both prayers and medical examinations are carried out in order to clarify whether the person is truly possessed or they're just suffering from some type of mental disorder. And if an exorcism is required, it is carried out with the most basic of tools that include holy water, a stole, a crucifix, and the rite of exorcism. And this permission for this has to be granted by the Catholic Church. Like a priest can't just go out and do an exorcism. He has to get permission, from the Archbishop of the Catholic Church. So another thing is when Father Gary Thomas went to Rome, like I said, he was taking training classes on performing exorcisms, and he thought it was very important to have actual hands-on experience. Now, with one of the cases that he did with Father Carmine Philippus, there was a 16-year-old girl who had been molested by her father, and she was in fact pregnant by him. So she was possessed by demons. And I say demons because it's usually more than one demon that has taken hold of the host. Once one of them gets in there, they say 7 more wicked are likely to come. And here's the thing. Demons, as I told you before, they can't just attack anybody. It has to be a person who has either given them the right to do so. Like you have to be engaged in some type of activity that allows them to come on in. Like satanic stuff, Ouija boards, being addicted to porn, abusing drugs and alcohol, things like that, okay? Or in the girl's case, the 16-year-old, incestuous relationships. Whether you are complicit or whether you agree to it or it's forced on you. Like when people are raped, that allows demonic possession to occur also. And this girl was molested by her father. That's incest. Things that are abominations to the Most High. That allows these demonic entities to overtake people. So that's clearly what happened in her case. And now they said that when they were trying to cast this demon out of her, for those of you who saw the movie, I believe she started coughing up nails. Now, that didn't specifically happen in real life to this girl, but there was a case where they said someone actually started throwing up nails. Okay. There has also been a story that someone said there was an exorcism performed, and not necessarily with this story, but there was another incident where someone said that a person who was demonically possessed started literally coughing up buckets of sperm, semen. So just all gross. And there was another story, and I believe this, I want to say that this actually happened to Father Thomas, the one in this story, because they say that there was a woman that was possessed, and when they were, exorcising the demon out of her, that she started coughing up and she spit up this black toad, like a black toad, and then it just dissolved into a black liquid. So all these kind of disgusting things that happen, right? Oh, I'm so sorry, Silent D, beloved. I didn't know you were eating. I'm so sorry. I should have warned you. I'm sorry. But with that all being said, yes, clearly crazy things happen, right? There's been stories of these people that are possessed having superhuman strength. There was one story where there was a lady who she contorted her body, which these people often do because the demons allow them to do this. And she bent the legs of an iron table. literally bent the legs with her bare hands. And I'll tell you something else. Have you all ever seen those people that are contortionists? These people that are contortionists, I don't know about you, but I think demons. A lot of times when I see those people, I say to myself that clearly has to be demons giving them the ability to do that, because I don't see how some of these people can contort their body in such strange and twisted ways without breaking bones and hurting muscle and cartilage. I just don't see how that can happen. I think that some of those people are given those abilities by demons. That's just my opinion. Swergo says crazy people have superhuman strength. Those people, I don't think they're crazy. I think they're all possessed by demons. I mean, I heard that years ago. They would say crazy people have superhuman strength, but these people, I don't think they're crazy. I think they're demonically possessed. Because people who are just like have mental illness, I don't think they really have superhuman strength. I think the demons give these demonically possessed people that strength. That's just what I think. Now, I could be wrong, but that's my opinion. But so when you have a rite of exorcism, that's why that movie was called The Rites, because you have to have a rite of exorcism, right? You have to be given the ability to do so. And here's the thing, Father Gary Thomas, he has people that travel with him when he performs these exorcisms. He has clinical psychologists, psychiatrists, because he wants to make sure that these people are in fact possessed. He doesn't want to confuse it with mental illness. So that's why he has trained staff with him. He has a group of people that go with him to pray, to pray over these people. There's been cases where people have levitated. There was one woman who fell to the floor and started flapping like a fish. There's been stories of people falling down on the ground and slithering like snakes. This is all the work of demons. There's been people that spoke in different voices at once. You've heard several different voices when they would speak. Another thing that can let you know that someone's demonically possessed is someone speaking in a language that they never studied. Someone suddenly speaking in Arabic, or not Arabic, or Aramaic perhaps, or Latin, ancient, languages that they never even studied. Okay, so that's all clearly crazy. And those are some of the things that happen. And then one of the main things that people do when they are performing an exorcism, one of the main things that the priests do is that they actually will pray, the prayer of Archangel Saint Michael. They'll actually say that prayer much of the time when they're trying to rid these people of their demons. And so it's all very scary. And I'm gonna tell you something, you have to be a brave person to be doing this, because you have to not only worry about the person physically attacking you because of the demons that dwell within them, but you also have to worry about them attacking you once the whole thing is over. Because you have to do, very often these priests have to do multiple exorcisms. They're not just getting rid of these demons sometimes on the first try. And then sometimes, there's no for sure way to know that the demon is gone. Like, in movies, you'll see like a cold breeze or something blow by or whatever. A person just falls to the ground and starts, acting, normal. And then you say, okay, the demon's gone. That's in movies. But in real life, they don't really always have a warning sign that the demon's gone. Because let's not forget, these demons, they can lie dormant and just pretend to be gone, only to show up later. So how they usually determine if the exorcism is successful is the priest pretty much has to make a judgment call. Pretty much has to make a judgment call. And also the priest has to rely on the person who's been possessed to pretty much tell them if they feel like the demon is gone. Okay? Yes, lingering around. Absolutely. So the rite is based on a real priest trained in exorcism. Now, for the last few years, Father Gary Thomas served at the Sacred Heart Parish in Saratoga, California. Okay, a bucolic suburb of San Jose. Now, at the time of this publication, which was in 2011, he was 53 years old. So he's about 63 now. Okay, so anyway, he was one of the Roman Catholic priests, and he said that he does a lot more than say mass and listen to confessions. He's also one of about 14 Vatican certified exorcists working in the United States, and the real life counterpart to the character played by Colin O'Donoghue in the new thriller, at the time it was new, known as The Rite. So yeah, I was right. It did come out in 2011 because this article was published in 2011 in January, and it said the new thriller. So clearly it came out that year. Now, Thomas became certified as a practicing exorcist after completing 40 hours of study at the Vatican's Athenaeum Pontificum Regina Apostolorum in Rome. During his time there, he met a fellow student, a journalist by the name of Matt Baglio. Now, Matt Baglio ended up chronicling Father Gary's journey in a book called The Rite, and that's where they adapted the book to screen and made the movie. It was called The Rite, The Making of a Modern Exorcist, which served as the basis for the movie. Now, he says, I believe in the personification of evil. That's what Father Gary Thomas said. And O'Donoghue plays Michael Kovac, a skeptical seminarian sent to Rome to become an exorcist who ends up hooking up with the eccentric Welsh priest, Father Lucas, who's played by Anthony Hopkins, and then he performs these exorcisms. Now, Kovac ultimately must perform an exorcism on his mentor when Satan takes possession of the elderly cleric after one of his subjects, a demonically possessed young woman who's carrying the child of her father, dies. Okay, and that woman was Marta Gastini. That's who played that role. Now, Thomas spent a week on the set of the movie, serving as an advisor to the film for director Michael Hofstrom. He drew on much of the personal experience for consulting the job. Now, he has sent out 100 people, or he had seen 100 people who felt that they were possessed by the devil. He said, I have exorcised 5. There are probably another 1 or 2 or 3 who I have been praying for regularly. Just as in the case with the young woman in the film, Thomas says about 80% of the people who come to him have been physically or sexually abused. And see, like I told you, it has to be something that's done like that for people to become demonically possessed. Have to be engaging in something nefarious and something that is clearly not of God, something that's an abomination, or some type of drug abuse or alcohol abuse. And you may say, well, what does drug and alcohol have to do with it? Drugs and alcohol. I'm going to tell you, because when you are in a state of alcoholism, or you're drunk, or you're abusing drugs, you're not in your right mind. So when you're not in your right mind, that's how demons can take over you. Okay? Because you can succumb to their advances and their influence. So that is how. So people who have problems with drugs, people who have problems with alcohol, they usually have demons. So every time he's called about a person who might be possessed, he asks what kind of help the individual has already received. Now, if he agrees to a meeting, he then sits down with the person for an interview about how the demonic attachment began. And he starts asking them questions about their family history. And a lot of times it is mental health issues, he admits. So some of these people aren't actually possessed. They just have mental health issues. Now, if Thomas determines that the person, in fact, has some type of demonic attachment, he has a number of methods to free them, him or her, from before he resorts to an exorcism. He says, you never try that first. You see, exorcisms, that's not the first line of defense. That's the last. That's like when everything else has failed. Because exorcisms are dangerous, okay? Because you're literally battling a demon. These things can kill you. They can even kill the host. All right. So yeah, that's the last thing that they want to resort to. So he says you use other means of protection like sacraments, prayer, the Eucharist. What you want the person to do is say the demon is not welcome. You have to get the person to say that. That's very important, because as long as the demon feels that it's welcome there, it'll stay there. And you know, that's why, and you see these movies where they have vampires and the person says, well, they say the vampire can't come in unless you allow them, you invite them in. That's the same thing with demons. They have to be invited in. You literally have to be doing something that gives them a contract to harass and oppress you and possess you. So he says you have to get the person to say the demon is not welcome. It's not wanted. So go away. The person cooperates by staying close to God through the prayer and through sacraments. Now, the best way to agitate a demon, Thomas says, is to pray over the subject. The person's face, he explains, will then begin to distort as the demon starts to manifest itself, something that filmmakers utilize for the in the movie The Rite. Now, there is a point when Anthony Hopkins in the movie, you see his head look very unnatural in the way it's turning. Okay, now Father Thomas says this is very normal. You see, when you pray, you hurt the demon, and the demon oftentimes will manifest itself in a very serpentine way. Thomas recalled an occasion where he visited a young Venezuelan woman who had been involved in palm readings for several years. He says, I was beginning to do some deliverance prayers. Within a few minutes, she began to tremor and her facial countenance began to change. You saw a snake. She began sticking her tongue out like a snake and hissing and rolling her eyes. She then coiled herself up. Her mother and father began to restrain her a bit. Now, he says, I went to get the Eucharist. The woman jumped almost out of the window at the sight of the Eucharist. Her parents held her down. One moment, you could literally see the demon. The minute you could see it, the next minute it was her. Like 1 minute you saw the demon, and the next minute you saw her back to her normal self. She kind of came back, and then I said, "Can you take the Eucharist?" She said, "I'm not sure, but I'll try." And as I offered it to her, she resisted. I said, "Just open your mouth." All I had to wash it down with was holy water. That's clearly spooky, people. Can you imagine? He said all he had to wash it down with was holy water. And again, I told you all, there have been instances where people have fallen to the floor and started slithering like a snake. Okay? And a friend of mine, and I think I told you all this before about my friend who was in church, and she said the pastor was about to exercise, or not exercise, but he was about to pray over this person who was supposedly possessed by a demon. You see, this man's family brought him in, and they said they believed that he had a demon attached to him because all the things that he was doing. And so the pastor told everybody in the congregation, listen, if you are not right with God, if you are not living in a righteous way, then you need to leave, because as soon as I cast out this demon, it's going to the nearest soul. It's going to attack the nearest person to it that it can get a contract, to oppress or possess. So do you know how many people jumped up and scurried out of that church? So many people. And that's how you can tell a lot of people in church, honey, they're not living right, because that whole church almost empty. However, my friend stayed, and she said when the pastor started praying over the man started convulsing, foaming at the mouth, as often happens, and then he fell to the ground, and then he started slithering like a snake. Now, I'm going to tell you what my oldest son told me that he witnessed. Now, I have an uncle who is a preacher in Florida, in Port St. Lucie, and he cast out demons as well. So my son was visiting my uncle one summer. He was about 18 or 19 at the time. So he told me that there was a woman who came, and her family said they thought she was possessed by demons. And so they asked my uncle to pray over her. And my son said my uncle held up his hand and he started praying over her. And then he started speaking in tongues and said this woman, she started convulsing violently, and her eyes rolled back on her head. She started vomiting, just consistently vomiting, and just fell to the floor and started shaking. And then she just all of a sudden went limp. And then she was back to her normal self. So my son actually witnessed this. Me, on the other hand, I wouldn't have wanted to be anywhere in sight. Okay. Right? Because like they say, when those demons jump out, they can attack anyone. And even if you're not a person that they can just have a contract to oppress or possess, these things sometimes follow you, because there have been priests that have done exorcisms and they've been followed, with these negative entities, afterwards. And even with the stories I told you all about, what is her name? Lorraine Warren and her husband, they were known to be engaging in casting out demons. They weren't priests, mind you. They were like paranormal investigators. But you know, they did the movie The Conjuring and the movie Annabelle. That was about cases that they had worked in Amityville Horror and all of that. So like I told you before, when they would have these cases they would work on and investigate, sometimes these negative entities and demons would follow them. So anyway, that's all very crazy. So I'm going to play for you. I have the audio, right, of the prayer of Saint Michael in Latin. Okay? I'm going to play that for you. Hold on, people. And I'm going to tell you the English version. In English, it's basically, they say, Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. Oh, and do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the divine power of God, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who wander throughout the world seeking the ruin of souls. Okay? I'm getting shivers, y'all. This is October Opal. So that is the prayer of Archangel Michael. Now, they have a longer version, but that's the short version that most people say. So I'm going to play this audio so you all can hear the version in Latin that the priest often use. And they say that it is often recited in Latin because the demons hate that language. They hate to hear it. Okay? FBA gotta say, let me get my oil. Okay, here we go, people. So this is the prayer of Saint Michael the Archangel in Latin.
Sancte Michael Arcangele, defende nos in prelio, contra nequitiam et insidias diaboli esto presidium. Imperet illi Deus supplices te precamur, tuque princeps militiae celestis, Satana Mariosque spiritus malignos, qui ad perditionem animarum pervargantur in mundo, divina virtute in infernum detrude. Amen.
Millie said that sounds creepy, Queen, that prayer. I mean, it maybe it was his voice, but it's not creepy. Okay? It's not creepy. It was probably his voice. And those of you, if you saw the movie Brooklyn's Finest, with what was the name? Don Cheadle and Wesley Snipes played in it. You all remember that movie? That's when I first heard the prayer of Saint Michael the Archangel. Remember, Ethan Hawke played in that movie. He was the bad cop. And at the end, he got killed when he was stealing all that money from the drug dealers. But if you recall, he had a tattoo on his back that was, in fact, Archangel Michael. And he recited that prayer when he was going to rob those drug dealers. Millie said, yes, Queen. His voice was creepy. Yes, that's what it was. That's all it was. But yeah, so anyway, he recited that prayer in the movie Brooklyn's Finest. That was my first time hearing it. And I remember doing research after hearing it because I was like, prayer of Archangel Michael. I never heard it. And I was curious about it. So that's when I started doing some research. Question, why do demons hate Latin language? Ladybug, that's a good question. I don't know, but that's an ancient language and people don't really speak Latin anymore. They use it in prayer, but people don't really speak it. I don't know why demons hate it. That's a good question. That is a good question. Let me see if I can Google that real quick. Bugina said, somebody in the chat started spitting up green pea soup when they heard the prayer. Oh. Okay, let's see if I can find the answer to that. Here it is right here. Listen. It says, demons speak Latin. Now, this is true. They actually do. Okay, demons speak Latin sometimes, but as a rule, they don't like that language, as efficient exorcisms are very easy to formulate and pronounce by anybody in that language, even by someone who knows nothing of Catholic theology or does not believe in most of its tenets. Demons don't like Latin as it requires the speaker strict adherence to logic and to grammar and tolerances no ambiguity. It is a very difficult language to express big lies that work through the habitual trappings of seduction. And of course, court loads of lies have been expressed in Latin by many people in power, but these lies don't sound sweet in that they just sound boring to the utmost. Whereas truths in Latin sound nearly always short and sweet, like so many proverbs. They try to translate Mein Kampf into Latin. It will sound most lengthy, pedantic, and barbaric in the same time, or at the same time. The reason Latin has this quality is that it started out right away as a de facto sacred language, or better said to be a magical language, whereby the virtue of their very sounds, all orders expressed in it, due care and correction were bound to be performed by invisible entities themselves, both good and bad, or just so. If the humans were to fail to comply with them, and it says, but demons, if the humans were to fail to comply with them, demons, they really don't like the language, basically because this was a sacred language. All right. And it's easier for people who are performing these exorcisms to force them to comply, or to banish them or cast them out when they're speaking this language. So even though demons will speak this language themselves because it's an ancient language, they don't want to hear people doing an exorcism speaking this language because it's easier for them to cast them right on out of there. That's obviously the reason why. They said, but demons don't like humans, or at least too many humans, to be able to handle a sacred language, giving them access to a realm that they want to keep private. Oh, okay. Demons are mainly characterized by at least a certain contempt for beings made of flesh rather than a fire or purer intellect, as they often are, even though they love to manipulate them. Never the other way around. Therefore, demons generally try their best to discourage humans from using Latin. Wow, that's very interesting. The Roman people never spoke Latin proper as a first language, except for a select class of elite people. And even then, the filthy rich, preferred Greek. But Old Italian, improperly called vulgar, or late Latin, though at its best times, all Romans, even the most wretched ones, were also proud of having learned at least some Latin. For instance, in the army or in the fora of political discussions, it always existed parallel to Latin from the times of Roman kings, mutually intelligible with it, but very distinct from it. Old Italian was the Roman medium of choice for love poems, much of which involve at least some demons by definition, and also for witches, incantations, and remained throughout the late antiquity and the Middle Ages up to our current times. Latin one can very easily order them to say the truth they know, not the lies they usually love to parade. And if from an occult negotiation with demons, the humans want to maximize their chances of coming out as victors, not as patsies, even when the desired outcome is strictly mundane or material, their interest is to use Latin, which not only is very easy to use compared to other more exotic sacred languages, such as Sanskrit or Arabic, as to give demons orders they cannot disobey. But it also intimidates them, but it's very easy yet majestic by its very easy yet majestic phonetics for humans, like a virtual stately courts of justice in which they are summoned. That's very interesting. I'm glad you asked that question. Tara says, I love the Latin language. Yes, I do too. In fact, I took Latin in the 9th grade when I was in high school. Okay, so anyway, there you have it, people. That is the true story behind the movie, The Rite. Okay, so I hope you all enjoyed that. Everyone, please like and share the video, like and share. Also, Make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And make sure that if you're not receiving notifications, that you always double check to make sure that you're still subscribed. Okay, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at QueenAhmadiyyah, on Instagram at divine_goddess_27, on Twitter at dgoddess27, and on Brighton and Patreon at QueenAhmadiyyah. With that all being said, Journal Overture says spooky fright night. Absolutely. Okay, so with that all being said, I'm going to conclude this broadcast, and I would like to thank you all for tuning in once again to Queen Ahmadiyyah TV Presents Beyond the Realm. So I'm going to go ahead and go, but also I want to tell the moderators, I'm going to have a meeting tomorrow. I'm going to send out the invitations as soon as I finish this live. I'm going to send out the invitations, and the meeting tomorrow is not going to be at 12. It's going to be at 11. So if you can't make it for whatever reason, that's fine. But I want to have a brief meeting tomorrow because something has come to my attention, okay? Something very interesting about moderators, not my moderators per se, but moderators in general on YouTube has come to my attention. So I want to have a brief meeting tomorrow, about 20 to 30 minutes long, starting at 11 o'clock, so that we can talk about these things, okay? Thank you so much, Queen. Oh, you're welcome, Howard. You're welcome, beloved. So, so you're going to scare me and leave? Okay, so with that all being said, enjoy the rest of this lovely night. And until next time, Royals, I will talk to you all again soon. Peace.